Welcome to the CIO Show, where we interview tech executives and learn firsthand about their experiences and ideas on all topics related to tech, business, and innovation. Today we have Dr. Mansur Hasib, former CIO and now global award-winning education leader, keynote speaker, and author.
Okay, so Dr. Mansur Hasib, did I pronounce that well or did I butcher it?
You did it very well.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you for taking some time with us today. You are aware of our platform, and I'd like to dive right in to be cognizant of your time today. So obviously, after reading your bio, your background in cybersecurity, your speaking engagement capability, I'd appreciate it if you would add more color and share a bit about yourself from your perspective.
Sure. I personally think that I've lived my life as an outlier. Some people think that that's a misfit or a nonconformist or even a rogue. But some people who think of it as positive think of me as an innovator. I personally think it's leadership because I think stagnancy makes no sense. We must all work towards improvement continuously. And that's true for both professional as well as our personal lives. And that's essentially what I've done. At a personal level, I have traveled through all 50 states of the USA. I love music, comedy, and table tennis. And right now, I am doing some voice acting and producing audiobooks for other authors because I believe that everybody should have multiple sources of income. So besides teaching cybersecurity and leadership, I also teach personal branding and public speaking. How's that for more color?
Perfect color. If you could delve deeper and share 2 notes of wisdom in your area of expertise, and I know that you have several, but this can be technological or business strategy based.
My key takeaways that I advise people are that significance is not determined by the amount of time on stage, but by what you do with the time you get. For example, I've seen a lot of speakers go on stage and the first thing they say is that this is only a 30-minute session or a 1-hour session, and I cannot really do justice to this topic in this time. And I'm thinking, you've already turned off the whole audience right in that statement. Because if I'm an expert in anything, I should be able to boil it down to 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes,
5 minutes.
whatever the organizers have given me. So I should always respect that amount of time and do my best within the time allocated. Because as I said, significance is not determined by the amount of time on stage, but by what you do in the time you get.
Very good. And in terms of major lessons, would you share something you've learned this year that has significantly changed your outlook and your organization? And I think we can count 2020 as well as 2021.
Well, the major lesson that I've lived my entire life through has always been to focus on things that we control. We do not control things like the pandemic or what other people are going to do. So the key is for us to focus on things we control. And obviously, I control my actions and my reactions. So what have I done this, I would say 2020, because 2021 has just started. So during the past 12 months, what I've done is I noticed a lot of people were getting laid off. And so I started a conversation series called Conversations with Dr. Cybersecurity. My main purpose was several. I wanted to keep the community engaged. I wanted to keep people thinking positively. And if anybody has experienced a layoff, I wanted them to be able to come to my forum to produce a video which would hopefully get them noticed, but also for them to ask me questions. How do I handle a layoff? What do I do about personal branding? Because I think that unless people see your video or see you doing things, you won't get noticed. So I wanted them to be noticed. I wanted their video or their personal brand to speak for them before they appeared at a job interview. So that was one of the key things that I've been helping people with throughout this entire last 12 months.
Well, very timely and honorable. Have you done that prior, or was that just piggybacking on the question out of curiosity?
No,
Was
I
that
never did that
new?
in the past. What happened was, as I said, I noticed this situation in March, right? Because the whole world literally shut down in March of 2020.
Absolutely.
So then I said, okay, I know that I have been an online educator and a social media aficionado. I'm very active. I have a personal brand, but I knew that lots of people don't have that, and a lot of people actually need training in that kind of forum also. So I decided, again, what can I do? So I started this series thinking, okay, maybe it will be successful. Nobody will show up. But guess what? It became so popular and successful that I've had over 80 people come on that show now, and people are calling it a show, and it's not just a conversation. And the videos are viewed all over the world. And I've received a lot of positive feedback from the videos because it's almost like a consulting thing that I'm doing. So they can ask about any question. They can ask about public speaking. They can ask about success. They can ask about interviewing. They can ask about cybersecurity. So topics are not important. What is important is that they come, chat, produce these videos. And many of them have gotten job offers as a result of the videos. They gained confidence through the videos. Many of them made their debut to the world in one of those videos. And then they got speaking invitations and things like that. And those videos played well for their job interviews.
That's wonderful. That's a way to be humane and profit for nonprofit. I think.
And yes, it also helped me because you see, a lot of people don't understand that when I promote somebody, it automatically promotes me. So all these 80 some people that I've promoted and shared videos with, guess what? I now have all those people and their network basically helping me and get more noticed. So it has actually increased the value of my personal brand as well as opportunities for me.
Wonderful. Well, you have 80 new friends. Absolutely. I think everyone would be incredibly grateful for support during this time.
Mm-hmm.
Would you also share the biggest challenge of your career, and with what takeaways would you say you were able to walk away?
The biggest challenge of my career really has been that over the last 40 years, essentially what has been happening is that there's a professional financial executive class that's literally been taking over all organizations. And so often they will come to an organization without having any knowledge of the vertical. So I see now energy companies being run by, again, finance executives with no background in energy. I see educational organizations, universities being run by people with just a MBA, no terminal degree, no academic background, no doctoral degree or any terminal degree. And I'm like surprised because it's like everybody's just thinking about the money, but they're not thinking about the product. So a lot of these companies now spending more money on advertising TV ads instead of academia and education. And so this has been the biggest problem. So what did I learn from that? What I learned from that is that we as educators and professors are often enabling this because we're often so focused in just our work and doing the education that we keep forgetting that there's a whole bunch of unethical behavior that is going on. And by continuing to accept the situation, we're enabling it. So that's part of the reason that I wrote this new book, the Bring Inner Greatness Out, because that's where I talk about the personal power that we all have. Because at the end of the day, we are the revenue producers. All right. And we need to make sure that when we go to negotiate compensation and things like that, we negotiate compensation based upon our contribution, not on some arbitrary salary number that some CFO is going to give us. You see? And we have that power. And that's what I've been teaching people. And people are beginning to get that. Look, if I'm producing $117 million revenue, whereas somebody else is producing, say, $1 million worth of revenue. Why should the two salaries be the same, right? Think about that.
Would you say that that's your particular incredible moment of realization that served as a career game changer, or would you have another moment to satisfy?
No, this was the career game changer because I was at a university where I had tripled the size of the program. I started with 1,500 students globally. I grew it to almost 5,000 globally. The program had never won any awards. I brought in awards as the best cybersecurity higher education program in the USA award 2 years in a row, 2018, 2019. My students and graduates were winning awards. So in other words, here I had tripled the size of the program, bringing in all this money. And guess what? I was among the 108 people that were laid off when the executive leadership above me got changed. So my boss got changed, the boss's boss got changed, everybody all the way to the president got changed. And all of a sudden they laid everybody off. And then they want us to renegotiate compensation and all that and reapply for jobs. And I said, are you serious? I'm now working for a guy with a PhD in political science with no job experience in cybersecurity. I'm not going to do that. So I just said, okay, I'll take the layoff and walk. So that was my aha moment. I said, I can do this guy's job, but that guy cannot do mine. So why is the wrong person being laid off? I'm the moneymaker.
A good perspective to share.
Yeah.
In terms of personal excitement, what excites you on a personal level during this sometimes quarantined, other times limited days? If you could share how you've grown throughout this pandemic time.
Well, what excites me is the difference that I'm making. So I'm constantly getting stories from people who have been touched by my work, and then they find this concept that I'm sharing, which is multiple sources of income. So, for example, I recently talked to a woman in India who apparently read one of my books 5 years ago and went into cybersecurity because of that book. I didn't know that she read it, but she recently came to my show and talked about that experience. And then she also read, or she's listening to the personal branding book. And then that is completely changing her perspective. She was never speaking. She was never doing public speaking in the past because she thought she couldn't do it or other people were discouraging her. But as a result of coming on my show and all this, she is now doing public speaking, and she's actually very good. And she's getting a lot of recognition as a result of that. And that is growing. So I hear stories like that all the time. She was never into audiobooks. And recently she listened to one of my audiobooks where I was voice acting, and she said, oh my God, the narrator can actually make a book come to life. So that was pretty interesting also.
That is good feedback. In terms of mentorship journeys, speaking of, you were obviously her mentor, but what about your mentor? What is the best advice you've ever received?
I think the best advice that I've ever received is, again, focusing on my actions. So that was my mother who was my mentor. And we were not growing up very rich. As a matter of fact, we were very poor. But she said, don't worry about those things. What you worry about are the things that you control. You cannot control where you were born, who your father was, who your mother was, or which country you were born in. But what you can do is focus on your work. Do good in the studies and do these things, and you will eventually be successful. Because I couldn't see that far ahead. And so that was a very interesting early lesson, focusing on my actions. So yeah, I obviously, whatever I was given, I always did the best in that because I could focus on my actions. And that has truly been a recipe for success my entire life. And that's what I also teach people.
Well, you jumped ahead and absolutely satisfied my next question, which is what mentor has impacted your life and how. But since your mother is probably your biggest mentor, deservedly so, could you share a mentor that's recently impacted your life, and how did they do that? Perhaps this year.
I don't think I've had a mentor who impacted me this year. The only things I could say is that I'm getting constant feedback on my public speaking. So, as you probably know, I'm a professional public speaker, but I'm continuously improving my craft and learning new things. So, I'm a member of Toastmasters, and over there are lots of seasoned professional speakers also who will comment and give me constructive feedback on all my speeches. So that is very, very helpful. So I can't say that I have a single mentor. I have a community of mentors like that in the Toastmasters group.
Well, that's preferred to a single mentor. But speaking of single things, what one daily habit contributes to your success?
I would say that looking at each day with excitement, what is the new thing that I'm going to do? Planning out my day. My thing has always been that each day should start out planned. I might put in 5 things in there, I might put in 10 things in there, but at the end of the day, if I can check off some of those things that I've done, that's a sense of accomplishment. And I believe that everybody needs positive feedback. We are humans, and it's okay if we don't get to all 10 of them, but we can always postpone them to the next day or something like that. But the feeling of achievement is key. And that was also one of the early lessons that came from my mom, because my mom said, always do 10 things at a time, because that way, even if you fail in 9, the success in 1 will be your inspiration. Because if you do only one thing and you fail in that, guess what? You're going to have a deflated ego, right?
Well, it sounds like you're quite resilient either way. But if you were to recommend to listeners who want to do what you do, a specific action or a call to action, what would you advise them? What would you recommend to them? How do they go about doing so?
I think if they really want to follow my journey, they should read my books, because I've shared everything that I know in my books. There are tons of my writings out there, videos out there. I have a YouTube channel. And then if any of that inspires them or they want to learn more, they can come to my conversations where they can ask me questions for 15 minutes at no cost. They can also go to my website.
Great. Well, I would say in terms of websites, what website, application, or business tool do you most recommend to our listeners?
I would say that they would find a lot in my website, www.cybersecurityleadership.com. It has tons of educational videos, conversations, and of course, if anybody wants to buy author signed books, they can also do that from that website.
Thank you, Dr. Hasib. But if you had to go back in time and switch your career entirely, what career would you choose?
I don't think I would. I have a single career now, and I don't think I would do something different. What I have done throughout my whole life, I don't think people are unidimensional, and I have switched directions throughout my life. I call these things pivot points. For example, I was headed to become an engineer when I developed an interest in economics and finance and management. So I switched. Then I was in a PhD program in political science, but then came the networking age. So I switched. I became a network engineer. And for a long time, I thought I would do that until I became a chief information officer. I was in that role for 12 years and then went into academia. So now I think I've become a public speaker, thought leader, and change agent. But I don't know. Is that what I'm going to be? I don't think so. I don't think people should focus on a single career or a single dimension, because each human being has multiple dimensions. And you'd be amazed at the various dimensions that you can expand in. And I feel like I wouldn't be anything different.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. I think it's obvious that you're a Renaissance man, and I appreciate that way of thinking as well, personally. Could we wrap up your final note of wisdom right now, and perhaps the best way that listeners can stay in touch with you? I know there are the books and the website, but do you have a preference? Do you like to be reached out to via LinkedIn or email or anything that can help our listeners connect with you.
Absolutely. I think the best thing to do is connect with me on LinkedIn, and they can send me a private message for a free copy of my audiobook, Bring Inner Greatness Out, while I still have these free copies available. And they can also connect with me through my website, www.cybersecurityleadership.com. And I think that's about it. That's probably the best that I can say.
And that's your final note of wisdom in terms of leaders delving into cybersecurity?
I honestly believe that somebody already in the field or have with no knowledge of the field, if they start with cybersecurity leadership, that will give them an excellent start. A lot of people are now beginning to use that for teaching purposes, because here's the problem with cybersecurity. The field of cybersecurity contains people side, policy side, technology side. Almost everybody is doing the technology side. Most curriculum is also dealing with the technology side. Hardly anybody does policy, and almost nobody does the people side. Well, my focus has always been holistic, and it starts with people, mainly because one of the key things of cybersecurity is perpetual innovation. And perpetual innovation is only done by humans. The human brain is the fountain of innovation. So if you ignore that, everything else is going to be a failure. And that is why you see tons of companies who are spending billions of dollars on technology without results. They're still having the breaches, they're still having all kinds of nonsense going on, and it's because they're ignoring the people. So my book basically gives everybody a clean start. It assumes no knowledge, but if you already have the knowledge, it will also channel you to thinking about this whole field holistically and differently. Because the other key thing is cybersecurity needs to be mission focused. For example, a healthcare organization is not going to have the same strategy as a nuclear power plant or an educational organization, because the mission comes first. And so everything has to be focused on the mission. And that's what I teach. I teach people that you must make the business of the organization that you're with successful first. Protection is secondary. It's always about business enablement.
Well, thank you very, very much, Dr. Mansur Hasib. This has been an episode with Dr. Hasib and Alex Pitigoi. We appreciate your time and look forward to connecting and reconnecting with you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of CIO Show. For more info on what we're up to, visit us at cioshow.com.